Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Dorothy. In today's video I want to show you the step-by-step process of how I made this beautiful wrap jumpsuit with long puff sleeve. If this is something you're interested in, please watch this video to the end because it will really help my algorithm and my watch time. If you're coming across this channel for the first time, you are welcome. Please do well to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. Let's get started with the video. I will be using this material for this tutorial and it's crepe fabric. It's 3 yard and the length is by 60. So I'll be folding this up. First of all, we are going to be working on the trouser part of the jumpsuit first. Then later on we'll draft the upper bodice, that is the half length. So now I'll go on to fold my fabric into two. This is it after folding my fabric into two. So now I'll just go ahead and trim off this edge. The reason I'm trimming off the edge is because I don't want to rule any line as a starting line or waistline. If you want, you can go ahead and rule a line, okay? It's the same thing. The length of this jumpsuit I am working on is 57 inches. So to have my trouser measurement, I'm going to remove my half length measurement from the actual length of the jumpsuit. That is 57 minus 17. I had 40 inches and I added 2 inches allowance for hemming. So for my trouser, I'm going to have 42 inches. So from the waistline, I'm going to come down by 9 inches for my hip line and I marked it. Then I came down for my crotch line, which is 11.5 inches, and I marked it. To get your crotch line, you will divide your hip circumference by 4 and add 2 inches. You will have your crotch line measurement. Then I came down by 19 inches for my nail line. Then the length of the trouser will be 42 inches. So I'm going to be extending this line horizontally like this. On my hip line, I'll be dividing the hip circumference I am working with by 4. The hip circumference I'm working with is 46 divided by 4 is 11.5. I mark that on my hip line and I'll also be marking the same on my crotch line and also on the waistline. Then I'll use my ruler to connect these 3 marks together. On the waistline, I'll go on to divide the waist circumference I'm working with by 4 and I'll mark it on the waistline. The waist circumference is 36 divided by 4 is 9. I mark that because I won't be adding any darts to the waist, so we'll not be adding any dart allowance. So I'll go ahead and use my chalk to connect the point and mark on my waistline down to the hip. Now to get the crotch depth, I divided the hip circumference I am working with by 4 and I added 2 inches to it. Then I went ahead to mark that on my crotch line. You can go on and do the same thing as well by using your own measurement. On my waistline, I'll be going in by ½ an inch. Then I'll go ahead and use my ruler to blend that line to the hip line. And for the crotch depth, I'll use my curve ruler to create a beautiful crotch curve like this. After creating the crotch depth, I'll use my free hand to connect this line up to the waistline. Then on my knee line, I'll be minusing 1 inch from the measurement I had on the crotch line and mark it on my nail line. That is, I'll be marking 13.5 on my nail line. Then on the length of this trouser, I'll go ahead and remove 2 inches, okay, so that this pant will have fitting when I am done sewing it. So now I will use my ruler to connect these points that I have marked together. On the hem line right here, I decided to remove 1 inch, okay? Then I'll also be removing 1 inch on the nail line. Because this is not a palazzo trouser, I want this trouser to be fitted. I decided to remove 1 inch from the side. Then right now, I'll use my ruler to connect a straight line like this. After connecting my lines, I went on to cut. And this is all for the front pieces. Now let's go ahead and draft for the back pieces. For the back pieces, I've gone ahead to fold my fabric into 2. As you can see, this fabric is folded into 2. So right now, I'll go ahead and place my front piece on the back piece like this. And now that I'm done arranging my front piece on my back piece like this, let's go on to take the measurement. On the waistline, I came up by 1.5 inches. This is because the back pieces of a trouser is usually higher than the front piece. So I will use my ruler to connect a slant line to the side of the trouser. On the waistline, I'll come out by 1.5 inches and I'll be doing the same thing on the hip line. I'll be marking 1.5 inches as well. Then on the crotch line, I'll extend my crotch depth by 2.5 inches. So now I'll go on to connect all those points that I just marked together. After connecting my points using my ruler, I'll just use my free hand to create this nice crotch depth. Right here on my nail line, I will come out by 1.5 inches as well. Then I will use my free hand to connect this line down to the length of the trouser. Then I'll go ahead and cut, and that will be all for the drafting of the back piece. For the upper bodies of this jumpsuit, I've already have my pattern paper on fold, so let's go ahead and draft. So like I said, I've gone ahead to fold my pattern paper into two. Then on this top like this, I'll go and roll a line of about 1/4 inch, that's 0.25, and this line will serve as my starting line or shoulder line. On my starting line, I'll place my measuring tape there and I'll come down by 10 inches for the bust length measurement. Then I'll come down by 17 inches for my waist length measurement. I will now use my ruler to extend the lines horizontally. Take note guys, we are using this pattern to draft both the front and the back piece together. Let me quickly label this line out so that it can be easy to identify. From my shoulder or starting line, I'll go ahead and place my neckline measurement here. This neckline measurement is for the back piece, so I'll be using 3.5 inches for my neck width, while for the neck depth I'll be using 1 inch. This is for the back neckline. So I will use my free hand and just create this round neckline like this. Still on my starting line or shoulder line, I went on to divide my shoulder measurement by 2 and I marked it. My shoulder is 16 divided by 2 is 8, so I marked 8 inches. Then from that point I came down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. Then I will use my ruler to connect this point to the neckline. From this point of my shoulder slope, I'll come down from there by 8 inches for my armhole line. I will connect the 2 points together on a straight line like this, and I will extend this line horizontally also. So now on the armhole line, I will measure it, then I will mark the midpoint. On that midpoint, I will go in by 1/2 inch. Then on this chest line, I'll go ahead and divide my round bust measurement by 4 and I'll mark it. So now I'll use my curve ruler to connect those 3 points like this to create the armhole depth. On the bust point, I'll go on to divide the round bust measurement by 4 and I'll mark it on the, and also on the waistline, I'll divide the round waist measurement by 4 and I'll mark it on the waistline. So now I'll go ahead and add 1 inch sewing allowance on the bust point, and I'll also be adding 1 inch sewing allowance on the waist. Then I will use my ruler to connect the points like this. The back pieces will be having a dart, and I totally forgot to add my dart allowance. So right now I'll divide my bust span by 2 and I'll mark it on my bust point, and I'll also be marking the same thing on the waistline. Then I'll go ahead and use my ruler to connect a straight line like this. For the dart leg, I'll go on to mark 1/2 inch on one side of the dart leg and also on the second side. Then I'll connect the lines like this. So now I'll measure the dart that I took and I'll replace it on the side on the waistline. So right now I'll adjust my lines like this, and then I'll go and cut. If you notice guys, I did not add any other allowance aside the side allowance. So when I'm cutting this on the fabric, I'll go ahead and add my zipper allowance. To transfer my pattern to my fabric, I went on to fold my fabric into 2 as you can see. Then I placed my pattern paper on my fabric like this neatly. Then I went on to mark 2 inches for my zipper allowance from top to bottom. Then I use my ruler to connect this on a straight line. Then I'll place my pattern paper and then I'll go ahead and cut. To avoid any form of zipper bulge, on the waistline I remove 1 inch from the zipper allowance. Then I'll cut that out. And this is all for the back pieces. Now let's go ahead and work on the front pieces. Now to work on the front pieces, I'm going to be opening up my pattern paper like this. Then on this side of my pattern paper, I'll come up by 1 inch. You can go as far as going up by 1.5 inches depending on what you want. Then I'll go ahead and connect a line from this side of my shoulder down to this point that I came up by 1 inch. Then I'll cut it out. For these front pieces, we are going to be eliminating this dart because we'll be doing some slash and spread method on the shoulder line, okay, because this front piece will be having some pleats. So right now I'll just use my scissors to cut one side of my dart leg like this, then I will use it to cover up the second leg of the dart, just like this. I hope you understand. This is as simple as anything. So right now I'll use my masking tape to bind the two darts together. Now for the slash and spread, I measured my shoulder line and I had 4.5. So I divided the 4.5 by 4 and I had 1.13. So I divided this line by 1.13 all the way. Then I'll be using my ruler to connect a straight line all the way to the down part of the front piece. I will number this line that I just wrote so that I will not mix them up when I'm drafting it on my fabric. Okay, so right now I'll just go ahead and cut out these lines. So now I'll go ahead and place my pattern on the fabric. Already I have folded my fabric into two, as you can see. So right now I'll go ahead and place my pattern on the fabric like this. And in doing this, I'll be having a spacing of 2 inches apart from each of the pattern piece. So right here you can see that my pattern piece has 2 inches spacing in between. So on this upper side I'll go out by 2 inches. Okay, I'm doing this because I want to avoid cutting a facing for it. So I'll just cut together facing for the front piece. So I'll mark 2 inches all the way to the length. Then I will use my ruler to connect the point I just marked on a slant line like this. And I will use my freehand to trace out the pattern directly on the fabric. Now let's cut this out. And this is all for the drafting of this front piece. So right now I'll remove my pattern papers. Then I will identify the wrong face using my chalk like this. So let me spread out this fabric. This is what it's going to look like when I am sewing it. Then I'll fold in the 2-inch facing like this. Then I'll go ahead and pleat on the shoulder. For the pocket, I already went on to cut some pieces for it. So the width of this pocket is 7 inches on fold, while the length is 12 inches. And this is totally optional. You can decide not to attach pockets to yours. So I'll use my scissors to make a curve in this part. I don't want it squared. To attach my pockets to the trouser, this is the front pieces of my trouser. I will go in on the waistline by 1.5 inches, then I'll come down by 7 inches, then I'll connect the marks like this and I will cut it out. I will be doing the same thing on the pocket as well. I will just basically place the pocket beneath the trouser pieces like this and I'll cut this out. So let me just make a mark so that I'll be able to identify the right face from the wrong face. So I'll place my pocket and the trouser piece like this, then I'll go ahead and stitch this side that you see me directing. And I'll be doing the same thing on the second piece. And this is what it looks like after I am done stitching the pocket. So right now I'll flip this to the right face, then I'll arrange my pockets, I'll adjust it properly, then I'll go ahead and stitch this curve area, just as you can see me doing. Now I am done stitching the curvy part of the pocket, that is the length. So right now I'll go ahead and arrange the pocket on the waistline. Okay, it should be looking like this after arranging it. Then I'll go ahead and stitch this part of the pocket. And this is what it looks like after I am done joining the pockets to the trouser. And I did the same thing to the second piece of the trouser as well. Remember, we are working on the front piece of the trouser. So right now I'll place the two front pieces together, right side facing each other. Then I'll go ahead and join the crotch line. To sew the dart of the back pieces of this trouser, I will simply fold the waist into two and I will notch the midpoint. I will fold in the dart like this. Then I'll take this to the sewing machine and sew the dart, and the dart will be 5 inches long. And also for the back pieces of my half length, I already notched the area where I'll be sewing in the dart. So I'll fold the area, then I'll go ahead and sew the dart. And I'll also be sewing the darts of the second piece as well. And when I am done with this, I went on to cut a pieces that I'll be using to pipe the neckline. And this pieces is about 2.5 inches wide. You can actually use a bias to pipe the neckline or cut a facing to turn the neckline. It all depends on what you want. So guys, this is what it looks like after I am done piping the neckline and also sewing the dart. So let's go ahead and attach it to the trouser piece. So here on my trouser piece, I'll go ahead and place my half length on it like this, right side facing each other. I make sure that the both dart that I place on the both pieces matches or align. Then I'll go ahead and stitch the waistline like this. And I'll also be doing the same thing to the second pieces as well. And this is what it looks like after I'm done attaching the half length and the trouser piece together. So right now I'll place the two pieces on each other, right side facing each other. Then I'll go ahead and run a temporary stitch on the zipper allowance. Now let's work on the pleat on the front piece. First off, I will fold in this 2 inches allowance for facing that I left earlier. I'll fold this in, then I'll use my iron and iron it. You can simply use your hemming gum to hem this down so it can stay flat, okay? But I want to weave mine after this before I do that. So I'll iron it, then I'll go ahead and make my pleat on the shoulder line like this. I hope you can see what I am doing. To create the pleat, I'll be folding my fabric like this, then I'll use my office pin to hold it down, and I'll do this all till when I am satisfied with my pleat. Then I'll use my iron and iron the pleat down. And this is what it looks like after I am done creating the pleat. Now I will go on and run a stitch on the shoulder line and also on this down part, so that the pleat can stay in place. Now I will place these pieces on each other like this, then I will go ahead and run a stitch. This is what it's looking like after stitching this down part. So now I will attach this to the trouser. I will place the trouser on it like this, right side facing each other. Then I'll go ahead and join this waistline. And this is what it looks like after I am done sewing them. So next I'll place each of the piece, that's my front and my back piece, together, right side facing each other. Then I'll go and sew the shoulder. And I will also be arranging the bodies as well, okay, so that we can take our bodies measurement. On the bust point, I'll divide the bust circumference by 2 and I'll mark it. Then I'll measure this allowance right here and divide it by 2 and mark it on both sides. And I'll be doing the same thing on the waistline as well. I'll divide the waist circumference by 2 and I'll mark it also. Then the allowance, I'll measure it and I'll mark it on both sides as well. Please do not forget to use your body measurement for this, okay? Then on the crotch line and on the hip line down to the length of this jumpsuit, I won't be marking my body measurement there because I'll be running a stitch of about 1 inch down because I want that part to be free. So now I'll connect the points that I just marked down like this, and this is what it looks like after I am done joining the sides. So right now I'll go ahead and join the crotch line like this, then I'll run a stitch of about 1 inch down to the length of this jumpsuit. This is what it looks like after I am done joining the crotch area down to the length of this jumpsuit. Now let's go ahead and fix the zipper. I will basically just open the zipper allowance that I run a temporary stitch on. Then I will take this to the sewing machine and simply fix my zipper, and that's all for that. This is it after fixing the zipper. You can see how the zipper is neatly placed. Now let's work on the sleeve. I will measure around the armhole like this, and I have 18 inches, okay? I did the same thing on the second armhole and I had the same thing, 18 inches. I will be using this organza for the sleeve, and this organza material is 1 yard, that is 36 inches. I'll be using the entire 36 inches to make the sleeve. If you want your sleeve to be fuller, you can use 2 yards or 2.5 yards depending on what you want. So I will simply fold this organza material into 4 because I'll be cutting the 2 sleeves together. So now I will use my free hand to create the armhole curve like this. Then from the top tip right here, I'll come down by 20 inches for the organza length because I'll be adding 4 inches band later when I'm done cutting out the sleeve. So right now I'll just go ahead and cut this out. So this is what it looks like after I'm done cutting the sleeve. So right now I'll go ahead and run a gather on the length and also on the top of my armhole. And I have also cut the band, and this band is 4 inches on fold, and I added 0.5 inches for joining allowance, so it's 9 inches wide when I open it up, and the length is 10 inches. So I'll fold it in like this, and I'll go and join the side. I'm done running my gather stitch on the armhole area of this sleeve and on the length. So right now I'll pick one of the thread and I'll draw the thread to make my gather. I will keep pulling the thread until I made my desired fullness. For the band, I am done stitching the side, so right now I'll turn it to the right face and I'll iron it so that the seam area will stay flat. This is what it looks like after I am done ironing the band. So right now I'll place my organza on the band like this. That is the sleeve area of the organza out to the band. Then I'll go and run a stitch. This is what it looks like after I am done attaching the band. You can basically fold this in like this and run a stitch of about 1 inch, but I'll go and attach this to my jumpsuit first. Okay, I'll place the armhole area of the sleeve to the armhole area of the dress, that's the jumpsuit. If you're a beginner, you can pin this down. That is, you pin your sleeve to the armhole of the jumpsuit all the way around before you sew it, but I'll be doing this directly. This is what it looks like after attaching the sleeve to the jumpsuit. So I'll turn this to the wrong face, so I'll finish up the sleeve. Okay, I'll fold in my sleeve like this, then I'll run a stitch. This is not supposed to be tight, you know, because it's a puff sleeve, so it has to be free and stylish. This is what it looks like after attaching the sleeve and also sewing the side of the sleeve. So next I'll go ahead and fold the length of this jumpsuit. Okay, I'll fold it in twice, and that will be all for this tutorial. I hope this is something that you are going to try. If you have not subscribed to this channel yet, please do well to subscribe to this channel. Thank you. See you guys in my next video.